The Drathar had long been the scourge of the galaxy, a race of titanic warriors with skin as dark as the void and eyes that glimmered like dying stars. For millennia they ruled with an iron fist, their conquests stretching across countless worlds. Empires rose and fell at their whim, each planet subjugated becoming another trophy in their vast collection. Yet, amid their glories, a restless discontent brewed. With every civilization they crushed, the thrill of conquest waned, leaving only echoes of their past triumphs. Now, they yearned for new challenges worthy opponents to reignite their bloodlust and quench their insatiable desire for power. In the depths of space, the galaxy bore the scars of their tyranny. Once vibrant planets, teeming with life, had been reduced to shadows of their former selves, their populations enslaved or exterminated. The Drathar's strongholds glimmered with the spoils of war riches taken from conquered worlds, and the proud banners of the subjugated civilizations hung limply, reminders of their fallen glory. Throughout the galaxy, complacency reigned among the conquered. Fear permeated the atmosphere, stifling hope and fostering a culture of submission. Many had forgotten the taste of freedom, resigning themselves to the belief that the Drathar were an unstoppable force of nature, a cosmic inevitability. Amid this bleak backdrop stood Captain Alara, a strategist of remarkable skill, representing a fledgling human colony on the outskirts of the Drathar's domain. Her colony, barely a blip on the vast cosmic radar, had emerged from the ashes of the last war. With determination etched into her features and a fire burning in her heart, she embodied the resilience of humanity. Alara had risen through the ranks, earning the respect of her peers and the loyalty of her crew, despite the overwhelming odds stacked against them. Yet, in the depths of her mind, a persistent unease gnawed at her. It was a sensation that something monumental was on the horizon, a storm gathering in the distance. As she surveyed the stars from the observation deck of her ship, the sleek, silver vessel glimmered under the light of a distant sun. Each star felt like a reminder of the darkness that encroached, a foreboding omen of the Drathar's insatiable hunger. Alara could sense their ambition, their need to reclaim the thrill of conquest. She knew that the Drathar would not stop until they found worthy adversaries and humanity was poised precariously at the edge of their desires. Alara's instincts warned her that complacency would be humanity's undoing. The Drathar would not overlook their presence forever. They would come for them, and when they did, the consequences would be catastrophic. As she turned her gaze toward the vast expanse of space, she silently vowed to prepare her colony for the inevitable storm. The whispers of war were already echoing across the galaxy, and she would be ready to stand against the tide. In that moment, the weight of responsibility settled upon her shoulders like a mantle. She was not just a leader, she was a beacon of hope for her people. Alara understood that the fate of humanity rested not only in her hands, but also in her unwavering determination to face the darkness head-on. The Drathar may have ruled the galaxy for centuries, but they had yet to encounter the indomitable spirit of those who had tasted freedom and refused to let it slip away once more. The stars shimmered with untold possibilities, and as long as she drew breath, Alara would fight to ensure that humanity's light would not be extinguished in the shadow of the Drathar. The tranquility of the colony was shattered in an instant. Captain Alara stood on the command deck, the hum of the ship's systems drowned out by the blaring alarms. Red lights flashed ominously, casting a crimson hue over the faces of her crew. The view screen displayed an ominous sight, a massive fleet of Drathar warships, their hulls gleaming like obsidian against the backdrop of stars, descending upon the colony with terrifying speed. The sheer size and power of the vessels sent a wave of panic rippling through the ranks. "Prepare for immediate evacuation," Alara commanded, her voice steady amidst the chaos. She turned to her first officer, a seasoned veteran named Eric, whose expression mirrored her own determination. "We need to get the civilians to safety. Activate the emergency protocols." As the crew scrambled to execute her orders, Alara's heart raced. She had sensed an impending threat, but nothing could have prepared her for the sight of the Drathar armada. Their approach was relentless, an unstoppable force sweeping through the stars, and now they had come to collect on their long-anticipated promise of destruction. Within moments, the skies erupted in a violent clash of energy. The first wave of Drathar fighters screamed overhead, unleashing torrents of fire that rained down upon the colony. Explosions rocked the ground, sending plumes of smoke and debris spiraling into the air. Buildings crumbled under the onslaught, their structures no match for the overwhelming might of the Drathar technology. Alara's crew worked feverishly, relaying instructions to the colonists who were now caught in a state of sheer panic. Families stumbled over one another, desperate to reach the evacuation shuttles. The streets, once bustling with life, were now filled with the sounds of terror screams, cries for help, and the relentless pounding of artillery fire. "Captain, we need to establish communication with the Drathar," Eric urged, his voice strained as he monitored the chaos unfolding around them. "Maybe we can negotiate. There has to be a chance for peace." Alara's instincts flared. "Peace? They came here to destroy us, Eric. They won't listen to our pleas. We have to focus on saving as many lives as possible." But even as she spoke, Alara's mind raced with the possibilities. Perhaps if they could buy enough time, they could find a way to turn the tide. She knew the Drathar's reputation, brutal conquerors who saw weakness as an invitation to dominate. Yet she couldn't shake the flicker of hope that there was a possibility to appeal to whatever sense of reason lay within their hearts. Amidst the chaos, she directed a message to the Drathar ships, her voice steady and resolute. "This is Captain Alara of the human colony on Verdana Prime. We seek peace and negotiation. We are not your enemies. We ask you to reconsider this attack and discuss our future." Her voice crackled through the communication channel, echoing into the void. Silence hung in the air, thick and heavy, before it was abruptly shattered by a low, mocking voice that reverberated back, the Drathar's response slicing through her attempts at diplomacy. "Foolish humans," the voice boomed, dripping with contempt. "Your pleas for mercy fall on deaf ears. You are but ants beneath our feet. We have come to reclaim what is ours, to crush your fragile spirits and remind you of your place in the cosmos." Alara felt a chill creep down her spine as the Drathar's arrogance pierced through the desperation of her message. They were not here to negotiate, they had come for conquest, driven by an insatiable hunger for power. As their laughter echoed through the comms, she could almost envision their disdainful expressions, twisted smiles beneath the weight of their own superiority. With renewed urgency, Alara turned to her crew. "We can't wait for them to make the next move. Get the civilians to the shuttles and prepare for a counteroffensive. We may be outmatched, but we won't go down without a fight." The crew rallied to her side, fueled by her determination. The shuttles were loaded with the terrified colonists, each face a stark reminder of what was at stake. As the last of the civilians boarded, Alara's resolve hardened. She had faced overwhelming odds before, but this was different. The Drathar were not just a distant threat, they were here, and they were merciless. The skies lit up with fire as Alara took a deep breath, her mind racing with strategies and contingency plans. The Drathar might underestimate humanity, but she would show them the true depth of their strength. As they prepared for battle, she knew the coming storm would test every ounce of her resolve, but she was ready to stand against the darkness. With one final glance at the chaos unfolding below, Alara rallied her crew, their faces set with determination. "Today we fight not just for our survival, but for the very essence of what it means to be human. We will not let fear dictate our fate." As the first volley of Drathar fire exploded against their defenses, she felt a surge of adrenaline. This was their moment, and no matter the odds, they would rise to meet the challenge. The Drathar may have come to obliterate them, but they would soon discover that humanity, when pushed to the brink, would awaken to fight back with ferocity they had never anticipated. The aftermath of the Drathar's initial assault left the colony in ruins. What had once been a thriving settlement was now a landscape of devastation, its inhabitants gripped by fear and despair. The skies, once clear and blue, were now shrouded in smoke, and the air was heavy with the acrid scent of burning metal and charred debris. Each day, the Drathar returned, their warships casting long shadows over the beleaguered colony, delivering a relentless barrage of fire that shattered what little hope remained. The Drathar's brutality escalated with each passing attack, designed not just to destroy but to provoke a reaction from humanity, a response that would expose their weaknesses. They targeted vital infrastructure, destroying communication systems and cutting off the colony from the outside universe. Power outages became a common occurrence, plunging the survivors into darkness and despair. With each strike, they aimed to crush the human spirit, instilling a sense of helplessness that would fracture any semblance of resistance. As the attacks intensified, the Drathar resorted to more insidious tactics. They deployed ground troops into the ruins of the colony, and their soldiers moved through the remnants with a calculated ruthlessness. Civilians became pawns in their twisted game, families were torn apart, and children were snatched from the arms of their parents, abducted to serve as leverage in their psychological warfare. The Drathar relished in the chaos they created, their laughter echoing through the desolation as they executed their plan to break the will of humanity. Alara watched helplessly as the psychological toll mounted on her people. The once vibrant community had transformed into a shell of fear, the very essence of life drained from their spirits. Conversations once filled with laughter turned into hushed whispers of despair. The colonists were paralyzed by the omnipresent threat, their eyes reflecting the horror of what they had witnessed. With every civilian abducted, every house reduced to rubble, Alara felt a part of herself shatter. In the command center, she gathered her remaining officers, their faces etched with worry and frustration. "We need to take action," she insisted, her voice unwavering despite the weight of their losses. "If we don't respond, we risk losing not just our colony but our humanity. We cannot let fear dictate our fate." Captain Eric interjected, his expression grave. "These tactics are designed to provoke us into a rash response. If we act out of desperation, we may only strengthen their resolve." Alara nodded, knowing he was right. The Drathar were masters of manipulation, and she could feel their insidious strategy unfolding around her. They wanted to exploit humanity's darkest impulses, to turn their fear into rage and fracture the very foundation of their resistance. It was a tactic she recognized all too well: play on the emotions of the opponent, strip them of their reason, and force them into a corner where they would lash out. The thought of her people being reduced to mere pawns in a game of terror ignited a fierce determination within her. She would not let the Drathar succeed. Alara knew that they had to devise a plan that transcended mere retaliation. They needed to respond with cunning and resilience. As the days wore on, Alara began to notice a shift among the colonists. Despite the overwhelming fear, whispers of defiance began to circulate. It started as a flicker, a tiny spark ignited by the realization that they were not alone in their suffering. Each story shared, each moment of solidarity among the survivors, strengthened their resolve. They remembered what it meant to be human, the capacity for compassion even amidst chaos. Alara made it her mission to foster this spirit of unity. In the makeshift shelters, she held gatherings, encouraging her people to share their stories, to express their fears, but also their hopes. "We will not let the Drathar strip away our humanity," she declared passionately. "We will rise from the ashes of this destruction. We will become stronger together." With every meeting, the sense of camaraderie grew. The colonists began to organize themselves, pooling their resources and sharing knowledge. Engineers repaired what they could, working tirelessly to restore communications. Farmers and laborers came together, transforming ruins into makeshift defenses. Alara watched as her people, once terrified and fragmented, began to reclaim their agency. They were no longer passive victims, they were warriors in their own right, standing shoulder to shoulder against the encroaching darkness. Yet, the Drathar continued their assaults, their brutality unrelenting. Each day brought new challenges and the stakes grew higher. Alara could feel the weight of their tactics bearing down on her, a constant reminder of the darkness lurking at the edge of their existence. The loss of each civilian haunted her, and she knew the Drathar would exploit those losses to sow discord. But within her heart, the flame of resistance burned brightly. She realized that their fight was not merely for survival, but for the very essence of what it meant to be human. The Drathar sought to exploit fear, but Alara would turn that fear into strength. She understood now that humanity's true power lay in their ability to connect, to uplift one another in the face of adversity. In those moments of clarity, Alara resolved to confront the Drathar not with sheer force, but with the tenacity and ingenuity that defined her people. She would harness the strength of her colony, channeling their collective spirit into a force that could stand against the darkness. The Drathar would not just find an enemy waiting to be crushed, they would find a united front, one that would challenge their arrogance and shatter their complacency. As she looked into the faces of her people, determination surged within her. They were ready to rise, to fight not just for their colony but for the very soul of humanity itself. Together they would awaken the shadows, turning the tide against the Drathar's relentless brutality. It was time to show the galaxy that humanity was more than a fleeting spark. They were a blazing fire, unyielding in the face of oppression. Alara stood on the command deck, adrenaline coursing through her veins as she surveyed the makeshift defenses of the colony. The Drathar had struck again, and this time they were poised to breach the remnants of their once secure settlement. Her heart raced, not just with fear but with determination. Today would mark the first significant stand against their oppressors. As the alarms blared, Alara gathered a small group of skilled fighters, a mix of engineers, former soldiers, and brave civilians who had refused to cower in the shadows. She knew that they were outnumbered and outgunned, but their spirit burned fiercely, fueled by the losses they had endured. "Listen up," Alara called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The Drathar are coming, and we have one chance to show them that we will not be broken. This is our home, and we will fight for it. We're not here to die, we're here to make them pay." The group nodded, resolve hardening in their expressions. They took positions along the perimeter, using the rubble and debris to their advantage. Makeshift barricades and traps were set, each step a testament to their ingenuity. They might not have the advanced technology of the Drathar, but they had something far more potent: their resourcefulness and determination. As the first wave of Drathar forces approached, Alara could see the dark silhouettes of their war machines cutting through the smoke. Her heart pounded in her chest as she raised her weapon, ready to fight alongside her people. The moment they appeared, the fighters sprang into action. "Now," Alara shouted, her voice steady and her heart filled with purpose. They unleashed a barrage of fire, their weapons illuminating the gloom with brilliant flashes. The Drathar were caught off guard, their arrogance blinding them to the tenacity of the humans. For a moment, confusion spread among the invaders as they stumbled into the carefully laid traps. Explosions erupted, sending Drathar soldiers flying, their once proud formation collapsing under the onslaught. Alara felt a surge of adrenaline and hope. This was not just a fight, it was a declaration of humanity's resilience. As the battle raged, she led her fighters with calculated precision, directing them to exploit weaknesses in the Drathar lines. "Flank them. Use the high ground," she commanded, pointing to a vantage point that overlooked the battlefield. The fighters responded, moving with surprising agility, executing her strategies with the fluidity of a well-rehearsed dance. Against all odds, they began to push back the Drathar forces. The shock of the unexpected resistance rippled through the enemy ranks, forcing the Drathar to rethink their approach. For the first time, they faced an opponent who was not merely fleeing or begging for mercy, but one that was willing to fight back with fierce resolve. As the tide of the battle turned, Alara's heart soared. They achieved a surprising victory that day, not through brute strength but through cunning and collaboration. The Drathar, unaccustomed to facing organized resistance from the humans, began to retreat, their arrogance shattered. The feeling of triumph surged through Alara and her fighters as they watched their enemies fall back, realizing that they had successfully defended their home. In the aftermath of the skirmish, a palpable shift occurred within the colony. The victory breathed new life into the survivors. They gathered to celebrate, sharing stories of bravery and resilience. For the first time, laughter echoed amidst the ruins, and hope began to flicker back to life. Recognizing the power of this newfound camaraderie, Alara sought to solidify their efforts. They began to regroup and strategize, embracing guerrilla warfare as their primary means of resistance. The humans learned to adapt, employing innovative tactics that exploited the Drathar's weaknesses. They set up hidden traps throughout the colony, creating a network of defenses that would confound their oppressors. With each passing day, Alara witnessed her people evolve. They transformed from a frightened group into a formidable force, using their knowledge of the land and their ingenuity to launch surprise attacks on Drathar supply lines and communication networks. Each successful strike sent a ripple of fear through the Drathar ranks, forcing them to reconsider their underestimation of humanity. Alara's leadership flourished during this time. She developed her strategic acumen, becoming a figure of inspiration for her people. Her ability to anticipate the Drathar's moves and counter them effectively transformed her from a commander into a symbol of resistance. The fear that once gripped her heart was replaced with a steely determination to reclaim their freedom. One night, as the stars twinkled above, Alara gathered her fighters around a flickering fire. "We have shown them that we are not weak," she declared, her voice steady. "We have proven that we can adapt, innovate, and fight back. But we must remain vigilant. The Drathar will not give up easily. They will retaliate, and we must be ready." The fighters nodded, their faces illuminated by the fire's glow. Each of them understood the stakes, the cost of their resistance. They were no longer just defending a colony, they were reclaiming their identity, their humanity. The turning point was near. The Drathar, having tasted defeat at the hands of these insignificant humans, would not rest. Alara could feel it in her bones. A storm was brewing, and it would bring with it the reckoning they all knew was coming. And so, they prepared. They would take the fight to the Drathar, launching their first organized counteroffensive. It was a plan forged in the fires of desperation and hope, targeting critical supply lines and communication systems. The humans would become a thorn in the side of their oppressors, a symbol of defiance in the face of tyranny. As Alara gazed at the stars above, she felt a surge of anticipation. This was not just about survival, this was about reclaiming their place in the galaxy. The Drathar might have ruled with an iron fist, but humanity had proven that they could rise from the ashes, transformed and determined. The next battle would be their declaration to the galaxy that humanity was not just a fleeting flicker of light, but a flame that would burn brightly against the darkness. The Drathar would come to understand that they had awakened something far more formidable than they had anticipated, a united humanity ready to fight for their very existence. The air was thick with anticipation as Alara stood on the command deck, her heart pounding in rhythm with the tension that enveloped the colony. This was the moment they had been preparing for since the Drathar first descended upon their home. Intelligence reports indicated that a massive Drathar force was en route to crush the burgeoning rebellion once and for all. The stakes had never been higher. Humanity's survival hinged on this climactic battle. Alara glanced at her team, the faces of her comrades illuminated by the dim glow of the consoles. They had all sacrificed so much: friends, family, and the lives they once knew. Each had taken on the mantle of fighter, each carried the weight of loss upon their shoulders. Yet, amidst that burden, there was a fierce determination, a shared resolve to reclaim their freedom from the Drathar's oppressive grasp. "Prepare for battle," Alara commanded, her voice steady. "We have a chance to turn the tide today, but we need to stay focused and united. We will use everything we've learned and everything we have. Our ingenuity will be our greatest weapon." As the crew sprang into action, Alara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From a fractured colony crippled by fear to a unified force ready to stand against the tide of darkness, they had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. They had salvaged captured Drathar technology, repurposing it for their own use. Makeshift weapons were mounted on their ships, and guerrilla tactics honed in countless skirmishes had become their arsenal. Moments later, the first Drathar warships emerged from the swirling clouds of the gas giant that had concealed their approach. Massive and intimidating, the obsidian vessels blotted out the sun, casting eerie shadows over the battlefield. Alara felt her heart race, adrenaline surging through her veins as she stood at the helm, her grip tight on the control panel. "Deploy the fighters," she shouted, her voice cutting through the tension. "And prepare the disruptor beams. We'll use their own technology against them." The colonists surged into action, their fighter ships soaring into the air like angry hornets, weaving through the skies in intricate formations. They launched a barrage of energy blasts at the approaching Drathar fleet, their newfound tactics catching the enemy off guard. The Drathar had expected a disorganized defense, but they faced an onslaught of ingenuity and determination. As the battle erupted in a cacophony of blaring alarms and explosive sounds, Alara fought alongside her comrades, maneuvering her ship through the chaos. She could see her fighters engaging the Drathar forces, daring to exploit every weakness they had learned to identify. They wove in and out of enemy fire, utilizing the terrain to their advantage as they launched their attacks. "Target the command ship," Alara barked, recognizing that taking out the Drathar's leadership could destabilize the entire fleet. The command ship was the heart of their operations, and she knew that if they could disrupt it, the Drathar would struggle to maintain cohesion in the chaos. They unleashed a concentrated volley of fire on the command ship, the energy beams crackling through the air like lightning. Alara's heart raced as they struck true, and the massive vessel shuddered under the assault. It was a victory, a symbol that humanity was no longer powerless. But the battle was far from over. The Drathar retaliated, their forces regrouping with a terrifying ferocity. They began to adapt to the humans' tactics, countering with coordinated strikes that targeted the most vulnerable points of the colony's defenses. The air filled with explosions, and Alara felt the weight of despair creeping in. The emotional toll of the war hung heavy in the atmosphere. She thought of the comrades they had lost, friends who would never see this day. The faces of those who had sacrificed everything flashed through her mind, fueling her determination to fight even harder. They would not die in vain. As the battle raged on, Alara felt the ache of exhaustion tugging at her limbs. But she pressed forward, rallying her fighters with fierce resolve. "Remember why we fight. Remember the faces of those we've lost. We fight for our future. We fight for each other." Inspired by her words, the fighters surged forward, their spirits ignited by a shared sense of purpose. They unleashed everything they had, employing the very tactics the Drathar had used against them: deception, traps, and the unexpected. They turned the tide of battle, and the Drathar began to falter under the pressure. In the heat of the moment, Alara spotted an opportunity. The Drathar's command ship had become disoriented, struggling to regain control. With a surge of adrenaline, she directed her ship toward it, her resolve solidifying into a single goal. They had to finish this. "Let's hit them hard," Alara called out, guiding her crew into the fray. They maneuvered around debris and enemy fighters, focusing their firepower on the command ship. With each blast, they drew closer, the exhilaration of the fight overshadowing the fear of what lay ahead. Just as they were about to breach the command ship's defenses, an explosion rocked her vessel. Alarms blared, and the ship shook violently. Alara struggled to maintain control, her heart racing as she fought against the impending chaos. "Status report," she yelled, trying to regain her bearings. "Shields are down to 30%, Captain," came the frantic response from the engineer. "We need to retreat." But retreat was not an option. Alara's heart ached at the thought of turning back. They had come too far, fought too hard. She glanced at her crew, their faces filled with determination. They wouldn't back down now. "Push forward," she commanded, her voice resolute. "We finish this today." They surged forward, and with one final, concentrated assault, they breached the command ship's defenses. The explosion that followed was blinding, a surge of light that illuminated the battlefield. The Drathar's command ship erupted in a cataclysmic explosion, sending debris raining down across the battlefield. As the remnants of the Drathar fleet reeled in shock, Alara felt a surge of triumph mixed with sorrow. They had won, but at a cost that weighed heavily on her heart. The battle was far from over, but they had proven that humanity could stand against tyranny. As the dust settled and the last of the Drathar forces retreated, Alara allowed herself a moment of reflection. They had unleashed their potential, turning the tide against an enemy that had once seemed invincible. But the emotional weight of the sacrifices hung heavy in the air. Each loss, each injury, served as a reminder of the price of freedom. With tears in her eyes, Alara looked at her comrades. They had fought valiantly, and she knew their courage would resonate throughout the galaxy. This battle would echo in history as the moment humanity chose to stand against oppression, to rise and fight for their future. As they gathered to celebrate their hard-won victory, Alara felt a renewed sense of hope. They had awakened something within themselves, a spirit that could not be extinguished, a unity forged in the fires of battle. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to fight for a brighter future. Humanity had begun its awakening, and there was no turning back now. The aftermath of the climactic battle left a stark and haunting tableau across the remnants of the human colony and the devastated Drathar territories. The once thriving landscape of Verdana Prime lay in ruins, a patchwork of charred debris and shattered dreams. Buildings that had stood as symbols of hope and progress were now twisted skeletons, their frames blackened and broken. The skies, once filled with the laughter of children and the bustle of daily life, were now silent except for the distant echoes of smoldering fires. The victory over the Drathar had come at a steep price. The human casualties were profound. Friends and allies lay in rest among the ashes, each loss a heavy burden that weighed on Alara's heart. She walked among the ruins, surveying the remnants of the battle, her footsteps echoing in the stillness. The sights and sounds of that fateful day played over and over in her mind, a relentless reminder of the cost of their newfound freedom. Yet, it was not just the human colony that bore the scars of war. Across the galaxy, the Drathar territories had been altered irrevocably. Their once mighty fleets had been reduced to smoldering wreckage, their strongholds crumbling under the weight of defeat. The Drathar had not expected to face such fierce resistance from what they had deemed a lesser species. The balance of power had shifted, leaving both factions grappling with the harsh realities of their actions. As Alara stood amidst the devastation, she couldn't help but confront the moral complexities that had emerged from their struggle. Humanity had fought valiantly, displaying strength and courage that had surprised even themselves. Yet, in doing so, they had also unleashed a darkness within, a capacity for destruction that they had once fought against. The battles they had endured had revealed not only their resilience but also their propensity for violence, a duality that made her heart ache. Alara pondered the implications of this newfound strength. Were they becoming what they had once fought so hard to resist? The thought haunted her as she gazed at the ruins of her home. She realized that the very qualities that had allowed them to fight back against oppression, their adaptability, their ingenuity, and their fierce resolve, could also lead to greater destruction if left unchecked. They had tasted the power of retaliation, and she feared that it could consume them if they were not careful. In quiet moments of reflection, Alara grappled with the duality of human nature. She understood that humanity was capable of both creation and destruction, cooperation and conflict. The potential for greatness existed alongside the capacity for ruin. It was a delicate balance, and she knew that the path forward would require conscious effort to maintain their humanity amid the chaos. With the fires of war still smoldering in the distance, Alara gathered her people to discuss their next steps. "We have won a significant victory, but our fight is not over," she began, her voice steady. "We must rebuild, not just our homes, but our very sense of self. We cannot let the darkness we've encountered define us. We must strive for something greater, something that honors those we've lost." As they set about the task of reconstruction, a renewed sense of purpose filled the air. They were not merely rebuilding structures, they were fostering a community that embraced unity, compassion, and understanding. The lessons learned from the battle would shape their future, reminding them that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy but in the capacity to uplift one another. With time, the galaxy began to change. The news of humanity's resilience spread, and they emerged as a formidable force, no longer viewed as a lesser species but as a partner in the cosmic landscape. They had earned the respect of their neighbors and even a measure of caution from the Drathar, who had underestimated their resolve. The balance of power was shifting, and Alara felt a glimmer of hope for a brighter future. Yet, as she stood before her people, she knew that challenges still loomed on the horizon. The remnants of the Drathar were still out there, plotting their revenge, and Alara could sense the tension brewing just beneath the surface. The galaxy was rife with uncertainty, and while humanity had shown they could stand against tyranny, the path to lasting peace would be fraught with trials. Alara's thoughts drifted to the future, to the responsibility that lay ahead. We must remain vigilant, she urged her people. While we have emerged victorious, we cannot afford to become complacent. The Drathar will not forget this defeat, and we must be prepared for whatever comes next. With those words, she committed herself to a future of hope and resilience. They would harness their newfound strength not to dominate but to protect, to foster alliances, and to strive for understanding. As humanity embarked on this new chapter, Alara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy was changing, and so were they. They would strive to wield their power responsibly, ensuring that their humanity remained intact as they faced the unknown. The fight for survival had awakened something profound within them, and as they forged ahead, they would do so with the memory of their losses guiding their path. In the depths of her heart, Alara understood that the struggle for peace and survival would always be a part of their journey. The Drathar would seek vengeance, but humanity would stand united, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The future was uncertain, but within that uncertainty lay the promise of hope, a chance to shape a new destiny, one built on resilience, compassion, and the unwavering belief that they could be better than they had ever been.